Alright, a little mini side project here. I've just, this is the board that's holding the Victron up on the wall, and I've just cut out two big holes in it. Basically, up the top here is where most of the weight is supported, and we've got the bolts up the very top, which go into the van, and then down the bottom here, we bolt it to the wall as well. So we really don't need the bit in the middle, and I'm doing everything I can to reduce weight. Alright, I just weighed these two blocks and they're 700 grams. This is 2.5 kilos, so it's about a 30% weight saving by cutting those out. That's good. Next up, we'll put some clear polyurethane on the bare wood. Hello YouTube. So let's have a run through of the electrical stuff we've been ordering. So we've pretty much planned exactly what's going to happen, where everything's going to go. I've got conduit and cable and a lot of the DC breakers and stuff like that has arrived. So we're going to go through that and I'll show you what we've got. Alright, first up we've got our cables. I'm using two different cables primarily throughout the van. We've got this 2.5mm speaker cable. Now this is going to be used for all the DC equipment, and this is a bit bigger than what we'll need for most of the cabling, but it was far cheaper to buy a big roll of this and just use that for everything rather than buy by the meter. This purple stuff is what they call non-migratory TPS cable. So it's much like what we use in New Zealand for normal houses, except this stuff is designed to be compatible with polystyrene. So I've got polystyrene under the floor here, so it means if I run this cable anywhere that's going to go near polystyrene, it means it's not going to cause any problems, leach out chemicals and disintegrate anything. It's also 7-stranded, which is a legal requirement for New Zealand for any AC cable in vehicles. Both of these are multi-stranded. You can see the speaker cable's got a lot of strands, and what it means is the cable's flexible, so over time jiggling around in the van is not going to add metal fatigue to the cables. They're going to stand up to the abuse of being in a van. I bought a number of these little connectors for the DC cables. Have a nice tight snug fit when you connect them together, and these particular ones have got a lock on them so they won't jiggle apart in the van, and you have to push the button to undo them. And then they've got little covers as well, so they need the cable soldered on. Slide the cable on, cover on first, solder the cable, slide it back on. Next up we've got our DC breaker boards and circuit breaker. So the circuit breaker is going 120 amps up to on 24 volts, so that's 3000 amps before it trips. That's a lot. So this is going to be our main battery switch and breaker between right after the batteries. The breaker boards, so we're going to be wiring them into the battery as well, and that'll feed, one of these panels will be 24 volts, the other will be 12 volts. It came with 5 15 amp breakers, and I ordered 4 5 amp breakers as well for our smaller circuits. Man, these look fantastic. Look at the back of this. So they've got a real heft to it. There's little LED lights that light up the labels, and it comes with a pack of labels so you can label things nicely. Alright, next up, two little DC converters, and they're designed to take any particular voltage input and then any particular voltage output, and you can configure them. There's a little dial there, so you can configure what voltage it's going to output. I've got two of them. One's 2 amps, the other's 10 amps output. So what these are for is to drive my lights and LEDs. The reason I need these is because my battery system is not going to be a standard 24 volt battery system. It's actually going to be more like 30 volts nominal. So these are basically voltage regulators which will get the voltage down to a steady 24 volts, which means the lights will be happy to run off the power. Alright, so this is the PDL iconic range of power points, which we'll be putting through the van. You can see we've got the standard Australian New Zealand plug there. It's got slots for the cables to go into, you just screw them tight. So the installation's pretty straightforward and simple. And then you just clip the faceplate on the front after folding those back. Finally, we have a roll of conduit, so I'll be using this to just make sure that the cables don't metal fatigue or get scratched up by the metal in the van. So here's a pretty standard typical place where I'm going to want to put a power point. So one under the bed, for example, so it can run the hot water heater. So what we'll do is install a panel here and then just mount that power point into the panel. Alright, just routed my first piece of conduit, so it went from the top here, round through here, through that pipe, down under here, which will go above the gas bottle, and then it comes out here ready to feed from the Victron. Here we are in the van. So this is my second day of wiring, and what I've done so far is just install a lot of the DC 12 volt and 24 volt cables. So you can see there's a bit of a mess routed in the wall there. We've done a few techniques here to ensure that we don't get cables fraying on the sharp edges of the van, so everywhere you see an edge curled back like that is quite sharp. For this main junction box, this is the back of our main cupboard where all the cables are going to come in. We've installed some plastic tubing around the edges here, and I've just cut that with a pair of scissors